Women are an important constituency, and it's not just a political question. Women deserve a place in around the table.
And they're going to. Are you giving us the assurance today that that will happen?
Certainly so.
Can you give us a time frame?
In fact, let me see, you see an interesting point. I may even raise.
Okay.
Only recently there was a lot of discussions, around the country about person A, person B, who seem to be very powerful. The thing is, I can tell you for a fact, we take the issue of women serious. And in fact, if you look at the development side of it, one of the key areas has been, how do you ensure women, youth, and persons with disability are not just periphery, but are having
can I
an opportunity to work and have a place around the competitions.
Okay.
Yvonne, I think let's stop lying to Kenyans. It's not enough to put in many flowery words that you care about women. I think what's important is to demonstrate that you actually care. You cannot tell us, today is February the 28th, for heaven's sake, karaoke.
Yes, it is.
And you cannot tell us that the president is still configuring his cabinet to take care of women 1 year before the next election. Unless, of course, the women of this country want to continue to be flower girls in being dangled politically. And I think, Daisy, my advice to you is this. Instead of fighting for the 1/3 gender rule, you should now fight for the 2/3. Why can't we change the equation?
Okay.
Why is it always women? Why are women always the third?
All right. So I'd like
why not the 2/3?
Yes, but I'd like to.
And I think we need to take that debate further.
All right. That's right. Perhaps we can also talk about.
But also, wait a minute. But also, in terms of the national executive,
yes,
there is one article that the president completely violated.
Okay.
Article 130 of the Constitution clearly demands of the president to put the national face of Kenya into the cabinet.
Right.
Besides the women issue, what he has done, he has concentrated 2 tribes in the cabinet. It's actually a violation of Article 130. It talks about the diversity of the people, the ethnic diversity of the people of Kenya.
I'd like to
that is a violation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to move this a little bit away from the executive and the presidency, because, Daisy, like you rightly put it, when this went to Parliament for vetting, the Parliament isn't just constituted of Jubilee members of Parliament. There is also members of opposition. Yes. Who would then play a role in saying to the president, we will not take these names, we want to make sure that they meet the constitutional requirement. Do you think they played that role, which is well within their purview, very well?
I think only 2 members of parliament raised the issue, Honorable Ken Okwara and Millie Odhiambo.
Right.
Having said that, I think that the 11th parliament is a huge disappointment, not only on the 2/3 issue, because of course they have failed even to implement a mechanism according to the Supreme Court advisory opinion. You have seen the way we have gone round in circles. I mean, members of parliament have come up with anything other than a mechanism to come to implement the 2/3. They've come up with other initiatives aimed at removing the 2/3 principle. Of course, they have even aided the executive, which you remember the last order of business in December was the miscellaneous amendments. One among them was the removal of the requirement of the 2/3 for the police service and for the judicial service commission. So even when you look at parliament, when you look at the way the parliament has behaved, the parliament have also worked towards ensuring that we do not meet the 2/3 principle. But not just that, even in terms of its oversight role on several others. I mean, you look at when the security laws were passed, you look at the kind of legislation, how many pieces of legislation that have been passed in parliament that have been challenged in the court because they violate the constitution on several clauses. So you've got to ask yourself also, what is parliament doing? And I think the 11th parliament, in terms of violating the constitution and working together with the executive to actually subvert the constitution and not even meet the timelines that we have in terms of the implementation schedule.
Yes.
I think that in itself is a problem. So working in concert with the executive, they're taking this country in a different direction.
I think what Daisy is saying is that if you look at the totality of all these aspects, it's really the failure of leadership in Kenya at both levels. You have a parliament that is captive to the executive. And that's why you hear of tyranny of numbers. And basically tyranny of numbers means that they cannot think on their own. They cannot think in terms of representation of the issues that concern Kenyans.
Okay.
So for me, what is really the crux of the matter is the failure of leadership and stewardship in this country.
Okay.
And precisely for that reason, Kenyans, when we were writing the constitution, demanded a type and character of a leader that is responsive to the issues such as gender.
Do you think, is the Jubilee administration responsive to those?
Not at all.
Okay.
In fact, when we on a scale
But
of
the
one,
point is,
Let's
the
hear from- let's
point
hear from
is,
Peter for
Yvonne,
just
and
a
I think
minute.
if
Yes.
you take up from what
Yeah.
Ekuru is saying, he's saying parliament. Parliament,
Right.
not Jubilee Parliament.
but let me correct you.
One minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Because none of us here can speak on behalf of Parliament.
That's true.
That's true.
But we can also see what they're doing.
That is true. And I think
We can also
one
see
minute,
that
one
Justin
moment-
Muturi
one
confirmed
one moment,
that actually this is a Jubilee.
1 minute.
He
One
confirmed.
minute.
Daisy has raised a very, very pertinent points, I think, in terms of things which our Parliament can do and should do.
Yes.
And I think we can hold that Parliament to account. And it is the totality of the institution. But the point I want to raise about the issue of laws and the challenge in courts and so on and so forth. Constitutionalism is not a mechanical thing. It is always going to be, till kingdom come, we are going to have laws questioned, executive actions questioned, judicial itself questioned, because that is exactly what we envisage for ourselves as a republic.
Okay.
That we shall continue
All right.
to perfect our democracy. I think that
Okay,
is
so that's
exactly
an
what it
interesting
is.
point to
Spin these
mention.
issues.
Just
Let's
as
spin
we're,
these
yes,
issues.
as you've mentioned, questioning decisions, constitutionality, and we've talked about the responsibility of Parliament. But then there's also some of the events that have happened around the presidency, and I know we had the previous guest and we talked a little bit about that. But there's a sense in which people think the president does not uphold the constitution, he does not respect the rule of law. I will remind you, with the 10,000 police recruits, he went ahead and ordered them to report to Kiganjo against a court order. I will
blowing
remind
of
you
the
also of a ship that was blown up.
The appointment of judges.